Mom, I'm making something special tonight. I love you so much. When I heard those words in the voicemail from my daughter, Chloe, after 3 months of absolute silence, I felt my heart split in two with joy and fear. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. You'll be helping me continue to get this off my chest. My name is Grace Hernandez. I'm 67 years old, and I live in a small but decent house in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago. This April morning, as I watered my geraniums in the small backyard, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. The aroma of the strong coffee I brewed every day mixed with the sound of the L train rumbling past, a noise that for 40 years had reminded me that life went on, even if I felt more and more invisible. I was wearing my blue apron with yellow flowers, the one my late husband Robert gave me 15 years ago. "You look like a queen in it," he used to say. Now the flowers are faded and the blue looks gray, but I can't bring myself to throw it away. It's the only thing I have left from a time when someone thought I was beautiful. When my phone rang that afternoon, at 5:30, I was peeling potatoes for a stew. My wrinkled hands trembled when I saw the name on the screen. Chloe, my sweet girl. It had been so long since I'd heard from her that for a moment I thought it was a cruel joke from fate. "Mom, I'm making something special tonight. I love you so much." Those 11 words were like a ray of light after 3 months in the deepest darkness. 3 months without a call, without a text, without knowing if my only daughter was still alive. After my forgotten birthday, after Christmas spent in solitude, after entire days without hearing my own voice because I had no one to talk to, I cried like a fool. The tears fell onto the potatoes as I replayed the message 1, 2, 3 times. "I love you so much," she had said. When was the last time I heard those words from her lips? I couldn't remember. I took off the dirty apron and ran to my closet. I pulled out my red blouse, the one she gave me for Mother's Day 2 years ago, back when she still visited on Sundays. "It makes you look younger, Mom," she had said then, kissing my cheek with tenderness. Now, putting it on in front of my bedroom mirror, I saw a woman older than I remembered. When had these wrinkles multiplied? When did my eyes lose that spark? I set the dining room table with the embroidered tablecloth my mother, who grew up in San Antonio, taught me to make. I took out the good china, the Lenox plates I saved for special occasions. I lit a candle to the Virgin Mary, who has always protected me. "Dear Mary," I whispered, "please let my girl come back for real, not just in body." When she arrived, at 8 o'clock sharp as promised, she was carrying a Nordstrom bag and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My Chloe, my beautiful 35-year-old daughter, dressed in an expensive black coat I'd never seen, her hair freshly cut at a fancy salon with perfect blood-red nails. "Hi, Mom," she said, kissing my cheek without looking at me. Her lips were cold, as if she had been walking in the rain, even though it was warm outside. "My dear girl," I replied, trying to keep my voice from trembling with emotion. "How have you been? I was so afraid that—" "I'm fine, Mom. Really good." As she cut off my words with a dry laugh, "I brought wine, the kind you like so much." She pulled out a bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, the kind that costs what I spend on groceries in a week. I had never tasted wine like that, but I didn't tell her. Why ruin the moment? "Are you happy to see me, Mother?" she asked as she opened the bottle with expert movements, as if she had learned in some class I didn't know about. "Of course, sweetie. I'm so glad you're here, though I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again." She laughed, a strange, hollow laugh, like an echo in an empty church. "Oh, Mom, always so dramatic. I brought you your favorite dinner, but it wasn't my favorite dinner. It was seared scallops with strange herbs I didn't recognize, a salad with a bitter vinaigrette, dry artisan bread. Nothing that I liked. None of the pot roast I taught her to make. None of the lasagna we used to prepare together on Saturdays. None of the apple pie she loved so much as a child. She served the wine in crystal glasses she had brought, because mine weren't suitable. She watched me as I sat down, with an intensity that made me nervous. Her eyes, once so sweet, now seemed to be evaluating my every move. When I bent down to pick up the napkin I had dropped, I saw it. A small, clear bottle of drops, no bigger than my pinky finger, peeking out of her coat pocket. She quickly tucked it away when she thought I hadn't seen. But I am 67 years old, and I have learned to see what others prefer to hide. She served the soup with a tense smile. The first sip had a strange metallic taste, like old coins under my tongue. Without a word, I switched my plate with hers. And right there, in that moment, her smile died completely. "Why did you switch the plates, Mom?" she asked, her voice tense, her eyes sharp as knives. Her hands clenched around the spoon until her knuckles turned white. "Because I've learned after 67 years that even a mother has the right to be cautious," I replied, not breaking eye contact. The same eyes I had kissed when she had a fever as a baby, that I had seen sparkle with joy at her first communion, that had cried on my shoulder when her high school boyfriend left her. Now those eyes looked at me as if I were a stranger, or worse, as if I were an obstacle. Chloe swallowed hard and dropped her spoon on the table with a sharp clink that made the wine glasses tremble. "You're sick, Mom. You need help. You're becoming paranoid." "Am I?" I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of all these months of neglect settle in my chest like a stone. "Or are you the one who can't look at me without calculating what I'm worth alive versus what I'm worth dead?" I saw her blink rapidly, just like when she was a little girl, and I'd caught her in a lie. But she wasn't my little girl anymore. This woman with expensive makeup and stylish clothes, who had come to my house after 3 months to bring me a dinner I didn't like and wine I couldn't afford, was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "What did you do, Chloe? What did you put on that plate?" "Nothing." Her voice sounded sharp, desperate. "I didn't put anything. You're imagining things." "And in the cup? Am I also imagining that little bottle you hid in your coat?" She fell silent. The silence filled the dining room like murky water, drowning years of family Sundays, of shared laughter, of secrets whispered between mother and daughter. The wall clock that had belonged to my grandmother marked each second with a tick-tock that sounded like a stopping heart. My Chloe stood up from the table without taking a bite. She grabbed her black leather purse, which probably cost more than all my clothes combined, and kissed my forehead with lips that felt like ice. A farewell kiss. A kiss of death. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered against my skin. "Sleep well." She left, closing the door softly, without slamming it, without yelling, without drama. She simply vanished into the night like a ghost who had come to collect a debt I didn't know I owed. I remained seated in my dining room, surrounded by the smell of the cooling scallops and the echo of her expensive perfume. The candle for the Virgin Mary flickered, creating shadows that danced on the walls like demons mocking my pain. That was the last time I saw my daughter. And the day I understood that sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who can most easily destroy you. She never came back. The following days crawled by like mortally wounded soldiers. I woke up each morning hoping it had all been a nightmare, that my phone would ring with her voice apologizing, explaining it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But the silence grew denser each day, like the air before a storm that never breaks. A week after that cursed dinner, while I was having my morning coffee in the yard, I heard a knock on the door. My heart raced. It's her, I thought. She's come to explain everything, to hug me, to ask for forgiveness. I ran to open it, my slippers shuffling against the tile floor, my hair a mess, not caring how I looked. It was the mailman. He had an elegant white envelope with the bank's logo, Chase. My hands shook as I signed for it, because I knew good news doesn't arrive in formal envelopes on a Monday morning. Dear Ms. Hernandez, the letter began with the coldness of a tombstone. We are writing to inform you that your joint savings account number 456789012345 has been closed at the request of the primary account holder, Ms. Chloe M. Hernandez. The remaining balance of $47,832 has been transferred to Ms. Hernandez's personal account per her instructions. $47,000. My life savings. The money I had scraped together, dollar by dollar, selling food at the Maxwell Street Market for 15 years after Robert died. Every hot dog, every tamale, every cup of lemonade I had sold under the unforgiving sun, with swollen feet and an aching back. Also, my daughter could get an education, so she could have a better future than mine. She had taken it all, without asking, without even telling me. I sat down in my kitchen chair, the same one where I had cried when my husband died, where I had prayed the rosary when Chloe was sick as a child, where I had planned how to pay for her college. The letter crumpled in my fingers into a ball of paper I couldn't bring myself to throw away. The phone rang. It was her. "Hello, Mom?" Her voice sounded different, colder, as if she were talking to a stranger. "Chloe, honey, I just got a letter from the bank. It says that I closed the account. Yes, it was necessary. Necessary. As if my savings were bitter medicine that had to be taken. But that money, it's all I have, sweetie. It's for my expenses, for my medicine, for... Mom, you don't know how to handle money. You never did. That's why Dad always took care of everything. Now I'm in charge." Her dad, my Robert, the man who had worked 12 hours a day in construction so she could go to a private school, the one who had skipped dinner so she would never go without, and now she was using his memory to justify robbing me. "Chloe, please, give me back my money. It's mine. I worked for it for years. It's ours, Mom. The family's. And I know better how to invest it. Trust me." The line went dead. I dialed once, twice, 3 times. It went straight to voicemail. She had blocked my number. That afternoon, I went to the bank. The manager, a young man with a blue tie and a plastic smile, explained with feigned patience that he could do nothing. The account was in my daughter's name as the primary holder. I was just a beneficiary. I could deposit, but I couldn't stop her from withdrawing everything. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why is my money in someone else's name?" "It was your request, Ms. Hernandez. You signed the paperwork 2 years ago." I vaguely remembered. Chloe had come over one Sunday, so loving, so attentive. "Mom, it's to protect you. If anything happens to you, I'll be able to help you immediately." I had signed without reading, trusting her as I always had. I left the bank feeling like a fool, an old fool who had given away her security for love. The days turned into weeks, the weeks, a month. My daughter didn't answer my calls, didn't reply to my messages, but I heard about her from others. Mrs. Carmen, my lifelong neighbor, told me she had seen her at Nordstrom buying expensive handbags. She was wearing a beautiful dress, Grace, and shoes that must have cost more than my rent. Mr. Aurelio, who drives a cab from the corner stand, told me he had taken her to fancy restaurants in Lincoln Park several times. With a handsome young man, honey. They looked very happy. He was driving a brand new car. My money, my life savings turned into luxury bags, expensive dinners, treats to impress a boyfriend I didn't even know. One night, as I was eating a cold cheese sandwich and chamomile tea because that's all I could afford, I received a call from an unknown number. "Ms. Grace Hernandez?" "Yes, this is she. This is Bank of America calling. I'm calling to inform you that your mortgage is 3 months past due. We need to schedule an immediate payment, or we will begin foreclosure proceedings." My house. My home of 40 years. The house where I had raised Chloe, where my parents had passed away, where I had dreamed of growing old in peace. It was also in danger. "But I've always paid on time," I mumbled, though I already knew the answer. "According to our records, the automatic payments were canceled 3 months ago. Ms. Chloe Hernandez, who is listed as an authorized party on the account, requested the service be suspended. 3 months. Exactly when she stopped visiting. It had all been planned. While I was crying over her absence, she had been cutting, one by one, the threads that held my life together. I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my kitchen, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator that needed repairs I could no longer afford. On the shelf, the photo of Chloe on her graduation day smiled at me mockingly. That girl in the white dress and radiant smile, who had cried with joy when she received her diploma, who had hugged me and said, "Thanks, Mom, I owe it all to you." Now that same girl was systematically destroying me, with the precision of someone who knows my every weakness. She knew where it hurt most. She knew how to break me without leaving visible scars. And the most terrible part was that, despite everything, in the depths of my mother's heart, sick with love, I still hoped she would come back, that she would explain, that she would ask for forgiveness, that she would be my little girl again, but my little girl was dead. And in her place was a stranger who knew all my secrets, all my weaknesses, all the exact places to twist the knife to make it hurt more. On Friday of that week, while waiting for the bus on Michigan Avenue to go downtown to look for a job, because at 67 I was going to have to work again to not lose my house, I saw her. She was getting out of a black Uber, dressed like a successful executive, with a Louis Vuitton handbag that cost more than all my furniture combined. She didn't see me, or she pretended not to. She walked confidently toward the Starbucks on the corner, where she met a tall man in an expensive suit who kissed her on the lips and stroked her hair as if she were the most precious woman in the world. There was my money, turned into expensive clothes, romantic dates, into the life she had decided to buy for herself with my savings. While I waited for public transportation in a 5-year-old dress and shoes that were starting to come apart at the seams, she was living like a princess on the fruits of my labor. I wanted to approach her. I wanted to scream at her to give me back what was mine, to explain why she was doing this to me. But something stopped me. Maybe fear, maybe shame, maybe the certainty that she would make me look like a crazy old woman in front of her elegant boyfriend. I stood there, invisible, watching my own daughter enjoy the life she had stolen from me. When I got home that night, after a full day of unsuccessfully looking for work, because at my age, nobody wants to hire you, even if you have a lifetime of experience, I found another envelope at my door. This time it wasn't from the bank. It was from a law firm. Morales and Associates, the gold letterhead read. Inside, a letter that chilled my blood. Dear Ms. Hernandez, this letter is to inform you that our client, Ms. Chloe M. Hernandez, has initiated legal proceedings to determine your mental and financial capacity. Based on the information provided, there are indications of cognitive decline that could justify the appointment of a legal guardian for the administration of your assets and personal decisions. A legal guardian. My own daughter wanted to declare me incompetent to take everything I had left. The house, my Social Security checks, my freedom, everything. Your presence is required at our offices next Tuesday, May 15th, at 10:00 a.m. for an initial evaluation. Failure to appear will be interpreted as further evidence of your inability to manage your personal affairs. My hands trembled so much I had to read the letter 3 times to fully understand it. Chloe hadn't just stolen my money. Now she wanted to steal my dignity, my independence, the right to make decisions about my own life. I thought of all the times she had feigned concern when I was sick, how she had noted every complaint about aches and pains, every minor lapse in memory, every moment I had shown vulnerability. It had all been data to build a case against me. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked through my house like a ghost, touching every object, every photograph, every memory. This was my house. My daughter had grown up here. I had been happy with Robert here. I had hoped to die in peace here when my time came. But now all of that was in jeopardy because of the person I had loved most in the world. On Monday morning, Mrs. Carmen knocked on my door. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she carried a cup of hot coffee. Grace, I have to tell you something, she said, sitting in my living room, on the same armchair where Chloe had played with dolls as a little girl. What is it, Carmen? I saw your daughter yesterday. She was outside, taking pictures of your house with a man in a suit. They had a clipboard and were measuring, pointing at things, writing on papers. My heart stopped. Pictures of what? Of everything, Grace. Of the flower pots you have piled up in the yard. Of the peeling paint on the facade. Of your clothes hanging on the line. As if they were documenting that you're not taking good care of the property. More evidence. More ammunition to prove I was a neglectful old woman who didn't deserve to live alone in her own home. And there's something else, Carmen continued, lowering her voice. The man with her was my nephew, Edward. He's an architect. I asked him later what he was doing, and he said a client had hired him to evaluate the remodeling potential of this house, that there was a very good price on the market for these lots. My house. My home. She was already selling it before she had even taken it from me. Carmen, I whispered, my voice broken. I don't know what to do. She took my savings. She's not paying the mortgage. She's suing me to take everything. And I just want my little girl back. Carmen hugged me with her warm arms that smelled of Vicks VapoRub and cinnamon. The way mothers who have seen other mothers suffer embrace you. Grace, honey, that little girl died a long time ago. The one doing this is no longer your daughter. She's a stranger taking advantage of your love. But I love her so much, Carmen. She's all I have left of Robert. She's my only treasure in this world. And that's exactly why she's hurting you. Because she knows you're incapable of defending yourself against someone you love. That afternoon, for the first time in months, I went for a walk in Humboldt Park. I needed air. I needed to see trees. I needed to remember there was a world beyond my pain. I sat on a bench and watched the young mothers pushing strollers, the grandfathers carrying grandchildren who shouted, "Grandpa, Grandpa," with crystalline laughter. Normal families. Families where love wasn't a weapon used to destroy. A little girl, about 5 years old, ran up to me. She had bright eyes and a smile that reminded me of Chloe at that age. "Lady, why are you crying?" she asked with the brutal honesty of children. "Because I'm sad, little one." "Why are you sad?" "Because someone I love very much is hurting me." The girl looked at me seriously, as if she were a doctor evaluating a complicated diagnosis. "My teacher says that when someone hurts us, we have to walk away, even if it's family." From the mouths of children comes the truth that adults dare not admit. Her mother came running, apologizing for her daughter's impertinence. But that child had given me more clarity in 2 minutes than all my months of suffering. I had to walk away, even if it was from my own daughter, even if it hurt like tearing my own heart out with my bare hands. Because sometimes, to save yourself, you have to let go of what you love most. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I didn't dream of Chloe asking for forgiveness. I didn't dream of impossible reconciliations. I dreamed of my mother, who told me from some luminous place, "Honey, no one has the right to walk all over you, not even your own flesh and blood." On Tuesday morning, instead of going to the law firm as I had been ordered, I did something I had never done in my life. I disobeyed. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one I had worn to Chloe's graduation, and walked to the bank. This time, I wasn't going to plead. This time, I was going to fight. "Good morning," I said to the same manager with the blue tie who had treated me like a confused old woman. "I want to open a new account, in my name only, and I want to report fraud." The man looked at me, surprised. I was no longer the helpless woman who had cried in his office weeks ago. I was a woman who had decided to fight back. "Fraud, Ms. Hernandez?" My daughter withdrew money from an account where I was the one making all the deposits. She never asked my permission. She never notified me. That's called theft, even if it's family. But ma'am, legally she had the right. Legally, perhaps. Morally, no. And I want it documented. Every dollar she took, every transfer, everything. The manager blinked several times. This was not the conversation he expected to have with a 67-year-old grandmother on a Tuesday morning. "I need you to understand something," I said, leaning forward. "I worked for 15 years at the market. I sold food under the sun with swollen feet to save that money. Every dollar represents hours of my life that I can never get back. And my daughter spent it on expensive handbags and romantic dinners. We opened the new account. In my name only. With my signature only. With my decision-making power only. For the first time in years, something belonged completely to me. When I left the bank, instead of feeling fear, I felt something strange. Relief. Like when you take off shoes that have been pinching you all day and you can finally breathe. I walked to the Legal Aid Society office that Mrs. Carmen had recommended. An older man, with a white mustache and tired eyes that had seen too many families destroyed by money. "Mr. Rodriguez?" I said, sitting across from his desk piled high with case files. "My daughter is suing me to declare me incompetent. She wants to take my house, my Social Security, everything I am. And what do you want to do, Ms. Hernandez?" "Defend myself. For the first time in my life, defend myself." He explained my rights. He told me I would have to undergo psychological and medical evaluations to prove my mental capacity, that it would be a painful process, because I would have to expose the cruelty of my own daughter to strangers. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" he asked. "Sometimes it's easier to negotiate, to reach an agreement." "Sir," I replied with a calm that surprised me, "for 67 years I have chosen the easy way. I have given in, I have forgiven, I have turned the other cheek, and look where it got me. And what if she wins? What if the judge decides you need a guardian? Then I will have fought. And that's already more than I've done until now. I signed the papers. For the first time, my name on a document wasn't to give something away, but to claim it. That afternoon, I returned home and did something I hadn't done in decades. I closed the curtains, unplugged the phone, and drew a hot bath with salts I had bought for special occasions but never used. I sank into the warm water and cried. But they weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of grief. I was mourning the daughter I had lost, the relationship I would never have again, the innocence of believing that family love was unbreakable. When I got out of the tub, I saw myself in the bathroom mirror. There was Grace Hernandez, wrinkled, gray-haired, with the scars of a difficult life, but for the first time in a long time, with clear eyes, without the fog of denial that had blinded me for months. "I'm not going to beg you to love me anymore," I said to my reflection, as if Chloe could hear me. "I'm not going to buy your love with my suffering anymore." On Thursday, I received a call I didn't expect. It was Chloe. Her voice was hysterical, desperate. "Mom, what did you do? The lawyers told me you hired a defense. Have you gone crazy?" "No, sweetie. Quite the opposite. For the first time in a long time, I'm very sane." "But Mom, I'm your daughter. This is all for your own good. You can't manage your money, you can't take care of the house, you need help." "You're right. I do need help, but not yours." "Mom, please, we can fix this. Come have dinner with me, we'll talk, like before." Like before. As if there were a before we could return to. As if I could forget the metallic taste in my soup, the vial of drops in her coat, my savings spent on her whims. "No, Chloe, not anymore." "Not anymore what?" "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I'm not going to pretend you love me when you only need me. I'm not going to be your victim anymore." She fell silent. For the first time in this conversation, she didn't have a prepared answer. "Mom, but I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother. But that doesn't give you the right to destroy me." I hung up the phone. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't broken. For the first time in this war I hadn't asked for, I had fired the last shot. That night, I ate a quesadilla with refried beans and a glass of hibiscus iced tea I had made myself. It wasn't a fancy dinner, but it was mine. Bought with my money, prepared in my time, eaten at my table, in my house, with my dignity intact. And for the first time in months, the food tasted delicious, because the taste of freedom, however small, is always sweeter than the taste of a love that is slowly killing you. 3 days later, Chloe appeared at my door. But this time she wasn't alone. She had her boyfriend with her, the elegant man I had seen at Starbucks, and an older woman who introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Ruiz, a specialist in geriatrics. "Mom, we've come to talk to you," Chloe said with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're worried about you." I let them in, but I didn't offer them coffee. I wasn't going to feign hospitality to the people who had come to evaluate me as if I were a piece of old furniture to be discarded. "Ms. Hernandez," the doctor began, sitting in my living room without asking for permission, "your daughter has told me you've been having some episodes of confusion lately. Forgetfulness, erratic behavior, irrational financial decisions. Like defending myself from the person who is robbing me?" I asked, looking her directly in the eye. The doctor cleared her throat, uncomfortable. "I understand you've hired a lawyer to oppose the guardianship process. That could be interpreted as a lack of insight into your own limitations, or as someone who has finally decided not to be walked all over." Chloe's boyfriend, a man named Sebastian who hadn't opened his mouth but was looking at me as if he were appraising my furniture, finally spoke. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this house is in need of a lot of repairs. The garden is neglected, there are leaks in the roof, the paint is peeling. A person your age shouldn't be living in these conditions." "And what do you know about my age?" I replied with a coldness that surprised me. "What do you know about what I can or cannot do?" "Mom, don't be rude," Chloe scolded. "Sebastian is just worried about you." "No, honey. Sebastian is worried about the value of the land this house sits on, about the profit you can make from selling it." Chloe turned red. "Mom, how can you think that of me?" "Because I'm not blind anymore, Chloe. Because I'm not going to pretend I don't see what's happening. I stood up from my chair and walked to the shelf where I kept the family photos. I picked up one of her at 10 years old, smiling with a missing tooth, hugging me in Millennium Park. I looked at it for a moment, and then slowly, I placed it face down. "What are you doing?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling. "I'm burying my daughter, because the little girl in this picture is dead, and the woman standing here is a stranger wearing her face." The doctor cleared her throat nervously. "Ms. Hernandez, this type of dramatic behavior is exactly what we're talking about. These disproportionate emotional reactions." Disproportionate? I turned to her with a calm that scared me. "Doctor, do you have children?" "Yes, I have two." "Do you love them?" "Of course." "And if one of them stole your life savings, tried to take your house, and sued to have you declared incompetent, what would you do? Would you smile and thank them?" The doctor didn't answer. "I thought so," I continued. "My reaction isn't disproportionate. It's overdue. I should have done this months ago." I went to my dresser and took out a folder I had prepared with Mr. Rodriguez's help. It contained copies of all the bank statements, all the transfers, all the evidence of the systematic theft. "Here you go," I said, placing it on the coffee table. "It's all documented. When she took my money, what she spent it on, how she canceled my automatic payments without telling me. If anyone here needs a psychological evaluation, it's the person who can plan a theft with such coldness." Chloe flipped through the papers with trembling hands. Her boyfriend leaned in to see, and his face grew pale as he read. "Mom, this isn't what it looks like." "Isn't it? Then what is it? A daughter's love? Filial care?" "Yes. I did it all for your own good. You don't know how to manage money. You need someone to take care of you. Like you took care of me these last 3 months? Without calling, without visiting, without asking if I needed anything. I was busy. I have my own life." "Of course you do. A life bought with my money." Sebastian stood up uncomfortably. "Look, Chloe, I think we should go." "No," my daughter yelled. "I'm not leaving until my mother sees reason." "Your mother?" I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a bitter laugh, like burnt coffee. "Now I'm your mother? 3 months ago, you didn't know you had a mother." "Mom, please, stop being so dramatic. We can fix this." "How? By giving me back my money?" "The money is invested. I can't just give it back." "Invested in what? In the expensive handbags I saw you carrying? In the romantic dinners paid for by my hard work?" Chloe looked at Sebastian in a panic. He didn't know the money she used to impress him came from robbing an old woman. "Well," the doctor said, also standing up, "I think there are family matters to resolve here before any medical evaluation." "There's nothing to resolve," I said with a firmness that surprised me. "My daughter made her choice when she decided I was worth more dead than alive. I've made mine." "What choice?" Chloe asked, her voice broken. I walked to my desk and took out some papers I had signed that morning with Mr. Rodriguez. "I changed my will. This house, when I die, will not be yours. I'm leaving it to the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home, so that other elderly people will have a place where no one can mistreat them in the name of love." Chloe went ashen. "No, you can't do that." "Of course I can. It's my house. It's my decision. It's my revenge." "But Mom, I'm your only family." "No, my only family died 3 months ago, when you decided my bank account was more important than my well-being." Sebastian was already at the door. "Chloe, let's go. This is too much." "Don't leave me now," my daughter yelled at him, but he was already gone. The doctor followed them, muttering something about coming back when things have calmed down. Chloe stood in my living room, crying like she used to as a child when she didn't get what she wanted. "Mom, please. I love you." "No," I said, closing the door behind the others. "You love what I have. It's not the same." "You're my mother. You can't do this to me. I am your mother. That's why I taught you how to walk. Why I cared for you when you were sick. Why I worked to give you everything you needed. And for that very reason, I am now going to teach you the most important lesson of your life." "What's that?" "That there are consequences for cruelty, even when it's toward the person who gave you life." Chloe left my house in tears, but this time, her tears didn't move me. This time I knew they were tears of frustration. not remorse. I locked the door and leaned against it, feeling my heart beat strong but steady. For the first time in years, I had made the important decisions in my life, and it felt like being reborn. The next few days were strange. For the first time in decades, I expected nothing from anyone. I didn't expect hurtful calls, disappointing visits, or apologies that would never come. I simply existed, and that was enough. A week after the confrontation, as I was watering my geraniums in the yard, the same ones I had neglected for months due to depression, I heard a knock. My heart no longer raced, thinking it might be Chloe. I knew it wasn't her. It was Mrs. Carmen, but she had company. A woman in her 50s with bright eyes and a genuine smile. "Grace, I'd like you to meet my niece, Rosa. She's a social worker with the city and wanted to meet you." Rosa shook my hand firmly. "Ms. Guadalupe, my aunt told me your story. I've come to offer you something." "What's that?" "A job. At the neighborhood community center, we're looking for experienced people to coordinate traditional cooking workshops. It would pay $500 a week, and it's only part-time. $500 a week. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. Earned through my own work, without depending on anyone. Without having to be grateful for crumbs of fake love. And why are you choosing me? Because Mrs. Carmen told me you used to sell the best food at the Maxwell Street Market. And because we need someone who understands that food doesn't just feed the body, it feeds the soul. I accepted without a second thought. The following Monday, I showed up at the community center with my blue apron washed and ironed, my kitchen tools in a tote bag, and for the first time in months, a desire to do something productive. My first group was 8 women of different ages. Some young women who didn't even know how to fry an egg, others older who had lost the will to cook after being widowed. All with different stories, but all looking for the same thing, a space to be useful, to be valued. "Today, we're going to make a classic pot roast," I told them that first day, laying out all the ingredients on the table. "But before we start cooking, I'm going to tell you why this dish is special." I told them about how it was a dish of resilience, created by immigrants and working-class families, using tough cuts of meat and slow cooking to turn something humble into something rich and comforting. "Like us," one of the older ladies said, "taking the life we were given and making something good out of it." Exactly. As we cooked, the women began to share their stories. Difficult divorces, ungrateful children, loneliness, loss, but also laughter, plans for the future, dreams that had been tucked away in drawers. "Ms. Grace," a young woman named Patricia said, "how do you manage to seem so calm? My aunt told me you went through something very painful with your daughter." I thought for a moment as I stirred the pot. "Because I learned that you can't force anyone to love you the way you deserve, but you can decide to love yourself. And you don't miss her?" "I miss the little girl she was. But that girl doesn't exist anymore. And I can't keep crying for ghosts." That afternoon, when I got home from the workshop, I found my mailbox full of letters. Not from lawyers this time. They were invitations to teach cooking classes at other centers, requests to cater small events, even a proposal to write recipes for a traditional food blog. For the first time in my life, people were seeking me out for what I could give, not for what they could take. I decided to do something I had put off for years: travel. Robert and I had always talked about going to New Orleans, to see the markets, to eat at the traditional restaurants. He died before we could. With my first month's salary, I bought a bus ticket to New Orleans. One way, no return date. Because at 67, I had learned that life doesn't have to be lived according to plans you made when you were a different person. The bus ride was a revelation. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to ask anyone's permission. I didn't have to give explanations. I didn't have to worry about disappointing someone. Just me, the open road, and the possibility of discovering parts of America, and myself, that I had never explored. In New Orleans, I stayed at a guest house run by a retired German couple who had decided to start a new life in America in their 70s. "It's never too late to reinvent yourself," Greta, the owner, told me as we shared coffee on the bougainvillea-filled patio. "The mistake is thinking that just because you lived one way for decades, you have to keep living that way until you die." I spent a week wandering through markets, tasting foods I'd never heard of, learning techniques that I brought back to Chicago, but more importantly, I spent a week just being Grace. Not someone's mother, not someone's wife, not someone's victim. Just Grace. When I returned, I found that my absence had been noticed. Rosa, the social worker, told me that several women had asked for me, wanting to know when the classes would resume. It's because you teach them more than just cooking, she explained. You teach them that they can start over. That afternoon, while organizing the photos from my trip, the first time I had taken photos for myself, not to show off to anyone, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Grace Hernandez? Yes, this is she. This is Mr. Mendoza from the family court. I'm calling to inform you that your daughter has withdrawn the petition for guardianship. There will be no legal proceedings. I hung up without feeling relief or triumph, only indifference. Chloe had lost the power to ruin my day with her decisions. That night, I made something I had learned in New Orleans: shrimp and grits. I paired it with a glass of sweet tea, the first I'd had since Robert died. I toasted alone, in my kitchen, to the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming, to the losses that had hurt like open wounds, and to the gains that no one could ever take from me. For the first time in years, the future didn't scare me. I was curious about it, because I had discovered something at 67 years old that I never knew. It's never too late to get to know yourself, and sometimes, to find your life, you first have to lose everything you thought to find it. It's been 8 months since that dinner that changed my life forever. 8 months since I discovered that my own daughter had tried to poison me slowly, stealing not just my money, but my dignity, my peace, my right to grow old with tranquility. This morning, as I brewed coffee for the new group of women arriving for the Tuesday workshop, I paused in front of the kitchen mirror. The woman who looked back at me was no longer the same one who had cried over potatoes that April afternoon. She had the same wrinkled face, the same gray hair, the same hands weathered by the years. But her eyes had something they had lost for decades: peace. My house is still the same house in Pilsen, but now it smells different. It smells of food cooked with self-love, not with the desperation of someone trying to buy affection. It smells of the bouquets of flowers I buy for myself every Friday, because at 67 I discovered I don't need to wait for someone else to give them to me. It smells of the future, not the past. The family photographs are still in their places, but I no longer look at them with painful nostalgia. Chloe smiles from her frames as what she was: a child I raised, educated, and loved. A child who became an adult who made choices I cannot control. I no longer carry the guilt of her choices, just as I no longer carry the responsibility of saving her from the consequences. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Carmen told me she saw Chloe at the supermarket. She was alone, paying with a debit card for a small purchase of basic groceries. No expensive items, no luxuries. Her boyfriend Sebastian had left her when he found out that the money she spent impressing him came from robbing her own mother. Some lies only work for a little while. "Don't you feel sorry for her?" Carmen asked me. "I feel sadness," I replied, "but not pity. Pity is for victims. Chloe is the author of her own story. I haven't heard from her directly again. Sometimes I wonder if she learned anything from all of this. If she understood that the consequences of hurting those who love you are real and permanent. But those are questions that no longer keep me up at night. Her growth or her destruction are no longer my responsibility. The community center where I work has become my second home. I don't just teach cooking. I now also coordinate a support group for older women who have experienced family abuse. Because I discovered that my story was not unique, that there were dozens of women like me who had confused love with servitude, who had allowed themselves to be hurt because they thought that was what good mothers, wives, and daughters deserved. True love doesn't hurt you, I tell them in every session. And if someone hurts you and then tells you it's for love, they're lying, or they're lying to themselves. Last week, a 60-year-old woman named Elena told me that her son had emptied her bank account and then told her it was to protect her from her own irresponsible spending. As she spoke, I saw my own story reflected in her eyes full of tears and confusion. "But what am I going to do?" she asked me. "How will I live without my son?" "You're going to live for you," I replied, taking her hands. Because before you were someone's mother, you were Elena. And Elena deserves respect, dignity, and peace. My new bank account has grown, little by little. It's not a lot of money, but it's mine. Every dollar I deposit is the fruit of my labor, my talent, my decision not to give up. I'm no longer rich, but I am free. And I've discovered that freedom is worth more than all the financial security in the world. Last month, I did something I had dreamed of for years. I signed up for painting classes at the local arts center. I had always loved to draw, but Robert used to say it was a waste of time, and Chloe would mock my old lady scribbles. Now I paint watercolors of the markets I visit, of the flowers I grow, of the wrinkled hands of the women I meet in my workshops. Hands that tell stories of work, of resilience, of self-love learned late, but learned nonetheless. My first exhibition will be next month at the community center. It will be called Hands Reborn, and all proceeds will go to the support fund for women in crisis. Because I've learned that the best revenge against those who hurt you isn't to hurt them back, but to use your pain to prevent others from suffering the same. The day before yesterday, as I was walking through Humboldt Park, the same park where a little girl had taught me the wisdom that we adults had forgotten, I came across a woman crying on a bench. She was older than me, perhaps in her late 70s, and she was clutching a cell phone as if she had just received bad news. I sat down next to her without saying anything. Sometimes, silent companionship is better than words. My grandson, she finally said. He asked to borrow money for his business. Now he says he can't pay me back, that I should wait, that I shouldn't pressure him. And what do you want to do? I asked her. I don't know. He's my grandson. I love him so much. Love doesn't mean letting yourself be hurt. I told her with the gentleness of someone who learned that lesson the hard way. You can love him and still protect yourself. We talked for an hour. I gave her my card for the community center. I don't know if she'll come to the workshops, but I planted a seed. Sometimes that's enough. When I got home that night, I made myself a special dinner, jambalaya, a dish Chloe used to love when she was a little girl. But I didn't make it for nostalgia. I made it because I felt like celebrating that I was still alive, that I was still growing, that I had managed to transform the poison of betrayal into medicine to heal other women. While I ate, I thought of all the times I had asked myself, where did I go wrong as a mother? I know now that wasn't the right question. The right question was, at what point did I stop valuing myself as a person and become only a function of others? I didn't go wrong as a mother. I loved, I protected, I sacrificed, I taught. I did everything a mother is supposed to do, but I forgot to do what a person is supposed to do, respect herself. Tomorrow I turn 68. It will be my first birthday in decades that I will celebrate exactly as I want, with whomever I want, doing what makes me happy. The women from the workshop are going to surprise me with a cake in the afternoon, and then I'll go out for a nice dinner by myself at a restaurant downtown. Because I've learned that the best company you can have is your own. Once you've finally forgiven yourself for all the mistakes you made for love, this story I've just told you doesn't end here. It's the beginning of something new. Because sometimes, when we think everything is lost, when we feel there's nothing left to do, life shows us that there is always one more chance to begin. The love that was stolen from me, I reclaimed by directing it toward myself. The money that was taken from me, I am earning again through my own effort. The dignity that was torn from me, I rebuilt by making decisions that honor me instead of decisions that please others. And if you who are listening to this can relate, if there is someone in your life who is hurting you in the name of love, I want you to know one thing. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to save yourself. Tell me something. Have you experienced something similar? Or do you know someone who has been through a similar situation? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, if it helped you understand that it's never too late to value yourself, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because these stories need to reach someone else who, like me a year ago, still believes that love is supposed to hurt. True love doesn't hurt. What hurts is lovelessness disguised as affection. But life had more in store for me than I could have imagined. A year after everything I've just told you, when I thought I had closed that chapter for good, I received a call I never expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in my workshop teaching a group of young women how to make pulled pork when my phone rang insistently. I ignored it the first time, because I was explaining the secret of a good spice rub, but it kept ringing. "Excuse me for a moment," I told my students, and I stepped into the hallway to answer. "Ms. Grace Hernandez?" The voice on the other end was formal, distant. "Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Ramirez from County General Hospital. I'm calling because your daughter, Chloe Hernandez, has been admitted here. You are listed as her emergency contact." My blood ran cold. Despite everything that had happened, despite the pain she had caused me, she was still my daughter. Mothers can't turn that love off, even if we want to. What happened to her? "She was in a car accident. She's stable, but she needs surgery. She doesn't have current health insurance and, well, we need a family member to come and sign some papers." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. The women from the workshop saw me come out of the hallway, my face pale, and they approached me with concern. "What's wrong, Ms. Grace?" asked Patricia, the young woman who had been one of my first students. "My daughter. She was in an accident. She's in the hospital." "Hospital. Do you need us to come with you?" offered Elena, the woman I had met in the park who was now a regular part of the group. For a moment, I considered saying yes. But this was a battle I had to fight alone. "No, thank you. But, can you cancel tomorrow's classes? I don't know how long it will take me to get back." The L train ride to County General Hospital felt endless. Throughout the journey, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, the genuine concern of a mother for her injured child. On the other, the bitterness of knowing that Chloe had probably listed me as an emergency contact not out of love, but because she had no one else. When I arrived at the hospital, the smell of disinfectant and the sound of machines immediately transported me back to that night, a year ago, when I had woken up in the emergency room after collapsing. How different I felt now. Then I was a disoriented victim. Now I was a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. At the information desk, a young nurse directed me to the surgical floor. "Your daughter is in the operating room," she explained. "The doctor will come out to speak with you when they're finished." I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other families living their own private hell. A young couple cried in each other's arms. An older man paced back and forth, talking to himself. A woman with a rosary in her hands prayed softly. I just waited. Without tears, without prayers, without drama. Just with the certainty that I would do the right thing, not because I owed it to Chloe, but because I owed it to myself. 2 hours later, a tall doctor in blood-stained scrubs came out of the OR. "Family of Chloe Hernandez?" I stood up. "I'm her mother. The surgery went well. She had a fractured hip and some internal bleeding, but we were able to stabilize her. She'll be in recovery for the next few hours." "Can I see her?" "Of course. But she's sedated, she won't be able to talk to you." I followed the doctor down hallways that smelled of a mixture of sadness and hope. When he opened the door to room 308, what I saw took my breath away. There was my daughter, my little girl, connected to tubes and wires, her face swollen and her arms bruised. She looked small, fragile, helpless, like when she had a fever as a baby, and I would stay up all night watching her sleep. For a moment, just for a moment, I forgot all the pain she had caused me. I just saw an injured woman who needed help. I sat in the chair next to her bed and took her hand. It was cold, thinner than I remembered. On her wrist, the gold bracelet I had given her for her sweet 16 was gone. She had probably sold that too. "Hi, honey," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. "I came as soon as I could." A nurse came in to check her vital signs. "Are you her mother?" she asked. "Yes. It's a good thing you're here." When she arrived in the ambulance, she kept repeating, "Call my mom, call my mom." Even unconscious, she was asking for you. Something stirred in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just recognition. The recognition that some connections are deeper than pain, stronger than betrayal. "Nurse," I said before she left, "do I need to sign anything for the surgery? Is there any procedure?" "The surgery is over, ma'am. But we do need someone to take responsibility for the hospital costs. It's approximately $50,000. $50,000. More than I had saved in my new account. More than I could possibly pay without going into debt. Almost the exact amount Chloe had stolen from me. Plus a little more. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. What happens if no one takes responsibility? We would transfer her to a public aid facility once she's stable, but she would have to wait a very long time for any additional treatment she might need. I looked at my sleeping daughter, breathing with difficulty, and realized I was in the same position she had put me in a year ago, facing an impossible choice between money and love. But there was a fundamental difference. I hadn't chosen to be in that situation. She had. How much time do I have to decide? I asked. Until tomorrow morning, when she's discharged from intensive care. That night, I returned home with my soul torn in two. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, looking at the photos of Chloe as a child that I had put back in their places after months of having them stored away. For the first time in a year, I cried for my daughter again, but these tears were different. I wasn't crying for what she had done to me. I was crying for what she had done to herself, for the bitter woman she had become, for the empty life she had chosen to build on the ruins of our relationship. I cried because a mother always cries when she sees her child suffer, even when that child has been her tormentor. The phone rang close to midnight. It was Mrs. Carmen. "Grace, I heard what happened. How are you?" "Confused," I admitted. "I don't know what to do, Carmen. What does your heart say?" "My heart says she's my daughter and I can't let her die." "And your head?" "My head says that if I help her now, I'll go back to the same cycle as before. That she'll abuse my kindness again." Carmen was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think, Grace? Maybe this isn't a decision about her. Maybe it's a decision about you, about who you want to be when all this is over." After I hung up, I stayed awake until dawn, thinking about who I was now, about the woman I had built after losing everything, about the values that truly mattered when everything else fell apart. And when the sun came up, I had my answer. At 7 in the morning, I was back at the hospital, but not alone. Elena, Patricia, and 3 other women from the workshop came with me, each carrying a bag with homemade food and thermoses of coffee. "We're not going to let you go through this alone," Elena had told me when they arrived at my house. "We're family now. Family." How strange that word sounded when applied to people who had chosen to love me, not people who were born obligated to. When we arrived at the hospital, Chloe was already awake. She saw me walk in and her eyes immediately filled with tears. "Mom," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You came." "Yes, I came." I sat in the same chair as the night before, but this time I didn't take her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Everything hurts." She paused, looking at the women who had accompanied me. "Who are they?" "My family," I answered without hesitation. "The people who have taken care of me this past year." I saw something shift in her face. Surprise, jealousy, the recognition that she had lost her place. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice breaking. "About what happened. About everything." "No," I interrupted, raising my hand. "First, I need to tell you something." I took a deep breath and looked her directly in the eye. Those eyes that had once been my entire world. "Chloe, I came because I am your mother, and I always will be. But I didn't come to rescue you. I came to say goodbye." "What? What do you mean?" "I mean I'm going to pay for your hospital stay. The $50,000 you need to get out of here." Her face lit up with hope and relief. "Mom, I knew you would—" "I'm not finished." My voice was firmer than I expected. "I'm going to pay for the hospital, but not because you deserve it. I'm doing it because I deserve it. Because I want to be able to look myself in the mirror knowing that when my daughter needed me, I didn't abandon her. Even after everything she did to me." Chloe blinked, confused. "I don't understand. I'm going to save your life, Chloe. But after that, I never want to see you again." The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Patricia, Elena, and the other women stood silently by the door, witnesses to something they knew was historic. "What are you saying?" Chloe tried to sit up in bed, but the pain stopped her. "I'm saying this is my last act as your mother. After this, I no longer have a daughter, and you no longer have a mother." "You can't do that. I'm your daughter. You can't deny blood." "Maybe not blood, but you can deny respect. And you lost the right to my respect when you decided I was worth more dead than alive." I pulled a folder from my bag with documents I had prepared that morning with Mr. Rodriguez's help. "Here is the check for $50,000, I said, placing it on the bedside table. "And here is a restraining order I filed this morning. If you try to come near me, my home, or my work after you leave this hospital, you will go to jail." "Mom, you're crazy. You can't do this to me." "Of course I can. I learned how to protect myself from you, Chloe. It took me 67 years to understand that sometimes the greatest love you can give is the love you withhold." Elena came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you ready, Miss Grace?" "Yes," I replied, getting up from the chair. "I'm done here." "Mom, wait!" Chloe cried out in desperation. "Forgive me. I can change. We can try again." I stopped at the door and turned to look at her one last time. "Chloe, I don't need you to change anymore. I don't need you to love me. I don't need you to respect me, because I learned to give myself everything I once expected from you. But I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. Now you're just a woman I knew a long time ago, who made choices that took her away from me forever." I walked out of that room with my head held high and my heart strangely calm. In the hallway, the women surrounded me with silent hugs that were worth more than all the apologies Chloe had never given me. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked as we waited for the elevator. "Like being born again," I replied, "but this time, knowing exactly who I am." 3 months later, I received a letter from Chloe. I didn't open it. I put it in a box with her childhood photos, with the memories of who she was before she became my enemy. I didn't throw it away because it was part of my story, but I didn't treasure it because it was no longer part of my present. My life continued to grow like a garden after a storm. The community center offered me a position coordinating a regional program for women who are victims of domestic abuse. I accepted because I understood that my pain had a greater purpose than just healing myself. Elena and I became best friends. Patricia asked me to be the matron of honor at her wedding. The women from the workshop became the daughters I chose, not the one I was given by biological chance. A week ago, Mrs. Carmen told me she saw Chloe walking with crutches near the Maxwell Street Market. She was alone, looked thin, and when she saw Carmen, she hid behind a flower stand. "Do you want me to tell her anything for you?" Carmen asked. "No," I replied without hesitation. "I have nothing left to say to her. And if she wanted to talk to you?" She had years to talk to me. She chose to speak with poison instead of words. That night, as I prepared dinner for the group of women who come to my house on Fridays, my new family tradition, I thought about how far I had come. From that broken woman crying over potatoes to this woman who had learned that self-love isn't selfishness, it's survival. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. For a second, I thought it might be Chloe, but I no longer cared. If it was her, I wouldn't answer. If it wasn't, I had nothing to fear. I answered calmly. "Grace Hernandez?" It was a young, nervous voice. "Yes, this is she. This is Maria, from the University of Illinois, Chicago. We're organizing a conference on female empowerment in later life, and we'd like to invite you to be the keynote speaker, a keynote speech, to share my story on a large scale, to speak to hundreds of women who might need to hear that it's never too late to save yourself." "What would you like me to speak about?" I asked. "About your experience. About how a 67-year-old woman can completely reinvent herself. Your story is becoming well known in social work circles. It's inspiring." I accepted without a second thought. An hour later, as I chopped vegetables for Friday's dinner, I realized something extraordinary. It had been months since I had thought of Chloe as my daughter. In my mind, she was now just someone I used to know. The mourning was over. The healing was complete. That night, when the women arrived for dinner, I told them about the conference invitation. "How exciting!" Patricia exclaimed. "You're going to help so many women. But more importantly," Elena added, "you're going to help yourself. You're going to close that chapter for good." She was right. The conference wouldn't just be to help others. It would be my final declaration of independence, my way of turning the deepest wound into my greatest strength. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't the kind that destroys the person who hurt you. It's the kind that builds you up until their absence becomes your most precious freedom. And sometimes, to become the person you were always meant to be, you first have to bury the person you thought you were.